I want to come back to the business, but I want to kind of transition because you mentioned the family, right? So you were there for some time before the family united with you there. All right. So tell us about what is it like in terms of the transition for your family. You know, are there things that they are concerned about prior to, and how do those concerns get alleviated once you guys are on the ground, or do they?
Yeah, there's a few things. One of the things is at that time, most of us didn't have a real comprehensive knowledge of what it was like to be there and live there. Very few people in the early 2000s had really lived there. So I kind of tricked my family and I teased them, for a while. So when you get there, it's sand, it's dirt, it's just hot, it's nothing. You prepared for this. So consequently, my wife, she went out and bought everything in the world. And finally I had to stop her. I said, just stop, please. I said, don't worry, I was just playing. Everything is there. And
Right.
she still didn't believe me. So once she got there, yeah, I was there for a number of months, maybe even 5 months prior to that, back and forth a little bit. So I got an apartment, and the cost of living at that time was pretty inexpensive. So we had 4 bedrooms, we had 3 living rooms, huge kitchen, maid's quarters, um, things that you really don't have in America at all, unless you live in Beverly Hills or Bel Air or something like that. We don't have houses with maid's quarters,
Right.
just on a normal basis. We don't have flats, with 2 doors. It's a door for your family to come in that leads into the main house, and then you have a door that goes to the living room where the men go, with a separate bathroom there. Um, so we had to, learn these types of things, but it was actually, and for probably everybody that moved to Saudi Arabia, in terms of their living conditions, it was an upgrade.
Okay.
It was an upgrade.
All right. So for people who think that you give up something, you actually gain.
You gain.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
in terms of living conditions, yes.
All right. Now, but still, the family they're in a place that they're unfamiliar with, even though you guys have upgraded in terms of lifestyle. But there's things to get used to. So
Yeah. The hardest thing initially was the language, of course, and especially for the children. Initially, for the children, we assumed that honestly it was some kind of racial thing going on, even though the majority of the Saudis are the same skin complexion. But later, I used to ask my son, when he first go outside and play, yeah, Muhammad, يعني تتكلم عربي? You speak Arabic? He's like, no. So he's out there playing and playing, and some months later, he's saying, yeah, Abi, the guy told me, he let me ride his bike, and he said, we're gonna go to the Baqala, and we're gonna buy this, and we got this, and I said, yeah, Muhammad, do you speak Arabic? He said, no. I said, well, how do you understand what he said? He said, I don't know.
yeah, kids got that universal language.
So, a short time later, then I hear him outside, and he's just speaking Arabic with the little kid, like
Picking it up.
he just picked it up like that. My older kids, they just picked it up. But like I said, initially those first few months was very hard on them because the kids would tease them and bother them. But it was because of the language barrier.
Yeah.
It wasn't because of any racial hatred or differences.
You know what? Let's kind of look at that for just a second, because one of the things that I noticed, I remember distinctly, man, telling people that I was black and I was from America, and I remember them telling me, one, I'm not black.
So when you're in the Sahara or Saudi like this, then if you're brown, which is considered red,
Right.
They don't consider you to be black, you know. So that's just, you know, part of their cultural experience,
Right.
and that's mostly because the truth is they're so diverse themselves. There's
Right.
black Saudis. I'm
Yeah, I
talking
mean,
black
yeah.
Saudis.
I remember
And they're
going to,
original Saudis.
yeah, I remember running into a man who looks Chinese. So I asked him, was he?
They are Malaysians that have been citizens
Exactly.
for long way back.
I remember he was offended.
From Bukhara.
Yeah.
Yani, these Russians that have been, you know, Saudis forever.
There's a group of Mali people from Mali that, you know.
Oh yeah.
But they can
all
still
through
Saudi,
Medina.
yeah.
All through Medina.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we met a number of them. Now, getting back to, so, okay, you know, we used to keep in touch when you were there, you know, so, I mean, you know, you had things kind of rolling, you were going back and forth, you know, what event or what series of events, you know, kind of started turning you back towards, okay, I might have to return?
What happened was, as I said, even in the beginning, us looking at these different countries to move into, the biggest factor, even today, that I see is, number one, whatever country you're thinking about visiting or living in permanently or temporarily, is the ease or the difficulty that you have entering and exiting that country. The second thing is, how will you attain some money, some economic power in that country, right? Whether it's Yemen or Jordan or Egypt, how are you going to get your money? How are you going to survive? So initially going into Saudi, the system was set up to make it really easy. So after you had that initial amount, you came in, you established the office. You have to have a physical office, furniture, people working in the office. They approve it, and this is when everything solidifies itself. But over the years, the government changed its ideology, understanding that everybody here that's doing business and making money are foreigners. So their ideas and concept was that, well, if we get rid of these people, then that will force our people to work. And as we see today, that's still not working. They're not going to work.
Right.
But this was so what they did was, let's say you had many licenses and certificates that you had to maintain to keep your business. Okay? You had your Sijil Tijari, you had your Rukhsa, you had your Rukhsa Baradiyya, you had your Gosi, your ta'meen, you had all these things that you have to maintain. So that what they did was they took the rukhsa baladiyya, which might have been 1,000 riyals at one time. Okay, now they'll make this the first year, okay, 5,000 riyals. Your sijla tijari, which might be 3,000 riyals initially, now it's 12,000 riyals. Okay. They did this across the board. So the first few times they did it, myself and a number of others, which was only, I'm going to say probably a little bit more than a dozen Westerners that actually had businesses in Saudi Arabia that I know of. So the first year they went up, everybody took the hit.
Yeah.
The second year they went up, 20,000 here, 30 here, 10 here. Everybody took the hit. The next year, they didn't really do anything. The year after that, it went from 20,000 just for the Sijla Tijabi to 300,000. So everybody understood at that point, it was like, that's their way of telling you, look, get out.
Okay, so basically, you know, you guys had your economic welcome had worn out.
Yes.
Okay, so now you have to transition back. Now, I imagine that logistically it's much harder because you went first solo, got everything established, and then brought them are you able to come back solo and get things together here, or do you guys have to come all en masse?
It just so happened that I came solo, but this was not by design. This is because, Yani, most of us were frantically trying to come up with some way to stay. So our time is running out, and as your licenses become expired, now you have issues getting in and out of the country because everything is depending upon your signature. Your signature is valid when all your licenses are valid.
Gotcha.
Exactly, it's all tied in. So what ended up happening is I had to leave the country early, and they held my family hostage. Yes, for a number of months. And due to the finagling of my wife, both of my wives at the time that were there, going in to see the Jawazat and Rais, and Mudir for Jawazat, he made an exception, they paid them out money and they were released, but it was quite a fiasco. But alhamdulillah, I believe that it happened like that so that I could, come back and get a few things reestablished. One of the things that I did was I never totally left off my business in the U.S.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember you used to come back and forth, do some jobs and go back.
No.
Yeah. So, okay, so now you're back. You've been there for, 8, 9 years. You and the kids and the wives, right? So now that you're back here, one thing that I'm sure that you noticed was that, hey, when you left, the prices were like this. And when you came back, it was quite a big difference.
Oh yeah.
So you as a businessman, I imagine that it's easier than the people who they trade their time for money. People like myself who just have jobs, right? So, but still, even for you, there's still some sticker shock, right? The price to hire someone when you left was here, and then you come back and it's there. Materials are more. Because you're in the same business. It's just that the environment's changed. So, talk to us about how you were able to adapt to that.
Yeah, that was initially very shocking. I don't know if you mentioned, but the speed in which gentrification has taken over the once predominant black areas, black and brown areas in Los Angeles, is almost like the speed of lightning.
Right. So,
going from paying workers $10 an hour, maybe $12, to $20 to $24 an hour, it was dramatic. And it's always that the consumer doesn't really want to pay.
Yeah.
So it was definitely a process. But alhamdulillah, Allah's merciful. And one of the things about having your own business is making these these kind of decisions and adapting to whatever the situation is at the time for your benefit, so you can survive.
Now, so over there, you're not doing any work. Here, you back at it.
You have to.
Okay. All right. So
this is America.
But still, though, this has been a theme for you that you've been able to kind of roll with the punches. So even when you came back, I know myself personally, I was kind of shocked. I was like, man, what's this brother doing? He's opening up a ranch and he got llamas and, was that due to some of the influence that you had from being overseas, or that's just something you kind of fell into?
Well, one of the things that me and my wife always agreed on was never having our children to attend public school. Wallahi, this is one of the best decisions. I wanted this, for all of my children, but I have so many that it became quite a task. But kind of been able to maintain it just a little bit, more than a little bit. But with that being said, upon returning, then the place that we moved in, the house that we moved into, was way out in the suburbs, because I was not going to bring my children back into the city of Los Angeles to have to deal with any type of, gang affiliation, any type of, bad attitude, that whole public school syndrome, that overcrowdedness.
Yeah.
So that's what drove me out there. The animals, the horses and cows and goats, and these things came, a little bit later, and we kind of progressed into those things as a family. I never will forget the first day I came up to the house out of the blue on a horse.
Yeah. I remember I came to visit you, and you had built the bird coop.
Yes.
I was like, man, I was I drove my car out there, and I'm like, man, now it's all dusty and dirty over.
Yeah.
Look, man, it was definitely off the beaten path, but I mean, now I'm all the way a city boy, even though I used to go back down south during the summers as a kid, so it's not 100% foreign to me. But I was surprised when you did that. But I kind of like later on I could kind of see, okay, because I remember we come visit you, and man, the kids would be excited about having the animals and taking care of the animals, and so it seems like, and I don't know if this was deliberate. I mean, I kind of think it was, right? You having them out there made it an easier transition for them to come back to California.
100%. Because all of my children live in close proximity, number one. There's a decent Islamic environment in that area. There's two large masajid there. And just this seclusion from the everyday hustle and bustle of the U.S., in general, in Los Angeles in specific, it was more like being in the desert.
Yeah.
You understand, laid back. Your neighbors are nice people, and us, we have a 5-acre ranch, so we really didn't have, we don't have neighbors on both sides or in the back of us. So it's like 2 or 3 houses in the front of us, and that's it. So yeah, it made it really easy. Made it easy for my family to go outside. My girls can go outside and run around, and nobody's gonna come down that street because it's only 3 houses on the street.
Right. I mean, but you still out here. We still seeing you almost every day.
Yes.
It's a lot of traffic, but so now I want to we want to wrap up now, because I want to get you back so that we can kind of get more into I want to end off here with your lessons learned from being overseas for an extended amount of time, and then I want us to return and kind of come back to see, because a lot of people have come back and they've come to the realization that a real hijra is close to impossible. Not impossible, wabillahi tawfiq, right? But for the majority of people, I mean, it's realistically, they can't do it. They're not going to be able to go to Saudi or Turkey or, well, before we end, we had a lot of people who, during your Morocco trip had some
Yes.
questions. We had a lot of feedback about that. So two things before we wrap. I would like you to compare your experience in Saudi to how the life is in Morocco, and is it easier? Is it more difficult to enter and leave there? If you could.
Yeah, yeah. Real briefly, one of the things that I've learned, in that I've been going in and out of Morocco now for about 15 years, is that the exit re-entry in Morocco is probably one of the easiest that I've ever encountered in any of these countries. The political relationship between Morocco and the U.S., if people have studied any history, has always been great.
Yeah.
So we don't have any issues with that. So this has made it rather attractive now as an option. But still, I've told brothers time and time again, my understanding is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He knows where He raised you up, where you were born. This is a part of your makeup. You're not going to shake it. It doesn't matter what you do. You can die in another country if you want to, but you're going to die as an American. That's where you were born. Okay? And I say that to say that there is some benefit in that. It has to be. If Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave it to you, there's some ni'mah in that. Don't throw away your ni'mah. That doesn't mean that you can't go and live someplace else and these types of things. But as we have seen over the decades now, the almost 100% overwhelming just majority of people, I don't care if they stay 20 years, I don't care if they stay 30 years, whatever the number is,
they're back.
They ended up coming back.
Yeah.
And if they have not returned, the issue is, in these countries, you have no right of inheritance. You have no right of ownership. So your children after you, right, will be left in a condition, for me, it's not acceptable. I feel as though I need to leave my children in a condition of strength. So it's just not acceptable for me. But these are the things that you really have to take in careful consideration. If you leave a daughter in Saudi Arabia and you die, or 2 or 3 daughters, what are they gonna do?
One thing that people don't know, if you are fortunate to make a long-term stay, especially in Saudi, that it is particularly precarious if you have boys. And can you explain that?
Yes. If you are in Saudi, for instance, and I believe it's the same in Kuwait, that if you have male children, once they're 18, they have to exit and they have to go home. This is the rule.
Yeah.
Have there been exceptions made, and you come up with things to circumvent the rule on occasion? Yes, but the rule is the boys become 18, they have to leave the country. That's it.
So that pretty, 18 in 2023 is not like 18 in like 1960. You're not an adult, really.
You're not capable of taking care of yourself.
You're not capable
in these
days.
And the other thing that's really important is that second generation outside of the United States does not get U.S. citizenship. Extremely important. We've had a number of families to suffer from this. You have a daughter outside of the U.S. She's
a citizen.
She's a citizen.
For her kids.
She has a child. If that child is born outside of the U.S., that child will not get U.S. citizenship.
So
that
no
second
US
generation outside of U.S., they do not get citizenship.
So then that person is comfortless because they're not a Saudi.
Normally, because it's the U.S., the alternate country, accepts them. In these cases, it's always been either France, Canada, or Britain. So they end up with those jinsiyya, if you will. But America, you're second generation outside of America, no, you don't get it.
Well, you can kind of understand why, because, American citizens, they have, what they call entitlements. So, I mean, you get into that second generation, you haven't contributed anything. I mean, not to make an excuse, but still, there's a lot to it. So, once again, man, very, very informative. So we want to kind of wrap it up and give you the last word, but we definitely want to get you back because we want to go, one of the things that we want to do is that we want to start brainstorming and we want to start thinking about the Muslims as an entity, because right now we're scattered, we're spread out, What do the Muslims, what do we look like in 5 years, 10 years, 20 years?
Exactly.
And so, I think that, individuals like yourself who, I've traveled, but to a lesser extent, right? But traveling always opens up your eyes to different possibilities. So I want to get you back to discuss some of those things, but for now, whatever final word to follow.
No. Well, one of the things that I've been discussing for quite some time with brothers as individuals is that now that we have gone through this little process, it's given us a little whooping, if you will. But we've gained more than we've lost.
Right.
But one of the things we have to understand is that, even if we go back and we look at the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, right? What was his methodology like in trying to convert the chieftains of Mecca? And then when this was not accepted, to Medina. This gave our Prophet the political power, economic base, physical base, in order to give his da'wah, the da'wah of Islam. SubhanAllah. Even when you come to modern day times and you look at Muhammad ibn Abdul Wahhab, and he made the connection with the Saudis, it gave him political clout, status, power. It gave him economic status, power, money. People, if you don't have anything that's going to drive you towards power, status, you'll be a slave. You are a slave to the system. You have no say-so in any of the laws. You understand? And even in terms of just pure Islam, how do you give da'wah with no money?
Right.
How do you give da'wah with no power? This is not how Islam spread.
Right.
When the Muslims went to different countries, they made everybody Muslim.
Right.
Everybody accepted Islam. They didn't go in a corner, subhanAllah, and just pray in the corner, just practice Islam in the corner. No, they gave da'wah to every single person. Their manners and their akhlaq was so impeccable that people just accepted Islam.
Right. Whole continent, whole countries.
So if we don't take control of our environment like this, we can go to the liquor store and give da'wah to the owner of the liquor store. What's the problem? We can go to the grocery store and give da'wah to the president of the grocery store. We can go to the mayor's office. We can go to the senator's office. We can give da'wah to every single person that we see. If we're nice to these people, like we should be, if we give them the haqq, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He can take us any place we want to go.
Right.
But if we remain off and distant, we become so irrelevant that it doesn't matter what we say. We can talk about people to the end of the earth. What difference does it make?
Yeah.
We're nobody.
Yeah.
We have nothing, But if we establish ourselves as a community, okay, and we put some effort behind ourselves, then, and this is what we're going to have to do, because most of us, we understand now, we're not going to have the ability to go anyplace else.
Yeah. So with that, man, I want to end it, but that's what we're going to pick up on next time, bi'idhnillahi ta'ala. هذا والحمد لله وصلى الله وسلم وبارك على النبي Salam alaikum warahmatullahi.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.